The winter winds blew harsh against the towers of Winterfell, but the cold had never unsettled Lord Eddard Stark. He had known true chill once, not of the flesh, but of the soul. It was a memory sealed beneath stone, buried with words never spoken, a secret so dark that even the godswood trees dared not whisper it. Ned stood alone in the crypt, facing Lyanna's statue. Her carved stone eyes stared back at him, hollow and judging, forever young. She had died screaming, but not from childbirth, not as he told Robert, not as he told anyone. It had been a lie, a carefully constructed, noble lie. Only it wasn't to protect her, it was to protect him. He hadn't come here as a brother, not really. He had come to silence a truth that would burn Westeros to the ground and destroy his own name. But the dead don't speak. And honor, as he had learned, was sometimes a sword with no edge, pretty to wear, useless in battle. Back then, the Tower of Joy had been a place of dread, not mourning. When he and Howland Reed found Lyanna, she wasn't laying serene in bed with a baby. She was tied to that bed, wrists torn, lips cracked from screaming, eyes wild with fury. Rhaegar hadn't taken her against her will. No, Lyanna had run with him, had believed in him. She thought she would be queen. She thought love would save her. But when Rhaegar fell at the Trident, all that was left was regret and vengeance. She wouldn't stop screaming when she saw Ned, wouldn't stop blaming him for Robert's war, for Brandon's death, for the blood soaking the land. She was no longer the girl with flowers in her hair. She was a mother, broken, betrayed, and cruel with grief. "She was never yours to save, Ned," she hissed. "You fought to bring her back to a man who wanted her chained. You don't understand." "Oh, I do. You didn't come for me. You came for the lie. You'll hide my son. You'll hide me. You'll bury me under stone and call it mercy." Ned had begged her, pleaded with her to stay quiet, but Lyanna had changed. She wanted her son to be raised as Rhaegar's heir. She wanted the truth known, that Robert was no hero, that the rebellion was no cause, that she had never been stolen. That was the problem. Because if the truth ever reached Robert's ears, the boy would die. And so would Ned. And the North would burn for his betrayal. The entire world would see the noble Stark for what he really was, a brother who let kingdoms fall to save his own name. So he stood there, blade in hand, as Lyanna begged for her son's life. She screamed, cursed, him thrashed in her restraints. But he had already decided, a blade across her throat, clean, fast, quiet, and just like that, Lyanna Stark became a myth. He whispered a different tale in Robert's ear, one of death during childbirth, of a kidnapped sister who died in sorrow. He lied with the ease of a man desperate for survival. He wrapped himself in honor like a cloak and raised the boy as his own. No one ever asked why a man like Ned Stark, so stoic, so faithful, never once took his supposed bastard to see a septon. Why the name Jon was whispered and not celebrated. Why the boy had eyes like neither parent. But the lie had weight, and weight, over time, feels like truth. Now, years later, with Robert dead and winter falling hard upon the realm, Ned Stark found himself staring into the empty stone gaze of the sister he killed. Jon was a man now, brave, noble, and full of the very honor Ned had pretended to carry. But what would happen if the boy ever learned the truth, that his mother didn't die birthing him, but was murdered by the uncle who swore to protect her? A voice echoed in Ned's ears, not real, but remembered. "You never came for me. You came to bury me." He turned from the crypt and ascended the stairs. Each step heavier than the last. Winter had come, yes, but so had reckoning. And ghosts had a way of clawing through stone when their truth had been silenced too long. The cold in Winterfell didn't just bite, it lingered. It clung to your bones like guilt. Ned Stark felt it seep through his furs as he stood by the window of his solar, watching the snow fall over the godswood. Jon was training with Robb again, their wooden swords clashing in rhythm. Ned couldn't hear them, but he didn't need to. Jon moved with a quiet purpose, not flashy like Theon or aggressive like Robb, just controlled, steady, like someone raised in the shadows of secrets. Catelyn had never forgiven him for Jon. She believed the lie like everyone else, but she hated what it represented, a betrayal, a mistake, an insult to their marriage. Yet she never once asked the boy who his mother was. She didn't want to know. Some lies are safer untouched, but Ned wasn't granted that mercy. Every time he looked at Jon, he saw Lyanna. Not in his features. Jon had too much Targaryen in his blood for that, but in his defiance, in the quiet, fire that never died. She had screamed for that fire to live, and he had killed her anyway. Maester Luwin entered quietly, carrying a sealed raven scroll. "From the Eyrie," he said. "Lord Arryn has sent word." Ned took it without a word, broke the seal and read. His hand tightened around the parchment. His face betrayed. Nothing but his mind was already racing. Lysa had written in a panic. She suspected poison. Jon Arryn was sick, terribly so, and he had been asking too many questions before he fell ill. Questions about lineage, about bastards, about who the king's true children were, but worse. He had asked about Jon Snow. Ned swallowed hard. If Jon Arryn had gotten too close, if he had discovered anything at all, it could unravel everything. And if Robert found out, he would kill the boy. He would see treason, not truth. He turned away from the window. Jon was laughing now, knocked, flat in the snow by Robb. Just a boy who didn't know the world would burn if his secret was ever known. That night, Ned sat at his desk long after everyone else had gone to sleep. He stared at old parchments, maps, and letters, but they all blurred into the face of his sister, bloodied, betrayed, broken. He could still hear her last words. Not, "Promise me, Ned," like he had told everyone. Her real final words were colder, harsher. "Tell my son who I was, or I'll haunt you till the snows drown you." He hadn't listened. Instead, he gave Jon a name, a castle, and silence. He built an entire life on that silence, and now that silence was cracking. A knock came at the door. It was Jon. "Father, Maester Luwin said you wanted to speak to me." Ned gestured him, steeling himself. Jon's eyes, dark and sharp, scanned the room before settling on him. "You're of age now," Ned began, voice steady. "And there are things you should know." Jon stood still, alert, like a wolf sensing danger. Ned hesitated. His mind screamed one truth, but his mouth opened with another. "I've arranged for you to go to the Wall. You'll join the Night's Watch." Jon blinked. "The Wall? You'll take the Black Serve with honor." He expected protest, maybe anger, but Jon just nodded slowly, face falling. "Is that what you want?" Ned hated himself then, hated the lie growing one more layer thicker. "It's what's best for you and the realm." Jon stared at him, and for a second, just a breath, Ned thought he saw something. Doubt, suspicion, a flicker of inherited sharpness from a mother who never backed down. "If you say so, my lord." He turned and left without another word. The door closed behind him with a soft click, but to Ned, it sounded like a tomb sealing shut. He slumped into his chair, eyes burning. He had sent Jon away not to protect him, but to delay the inevitable. Jon would learn one day. Someone would tell him, or he'd find the truth in the wrong whisper, the wrong scroll. And when that day came, the boy would look at him not with admiration, but with betrayal. Just like Lyanna did, and he would deserve it. The Wall was unforgiving, but Jon Snow never flinched. The cold, the crude brothers, the thick stink of sweat and old blood. He wore it like armor. Yet somewhere deep beneath the practiced discipline, something festered. A question, a shadow. His uncle never named. Jon had always known he was different, not just a bastard, different. Ned Stark had raised him well, but never lovingly. Always distant, always silent about the one thing Jon needed to know. Who was his mother? Why couldn't he be acknowledged even in private? Why was honor more important than truth? He was too smart to ask again. The last time he did, Ned had simply looked through him like he was a ghost. But now, at Castle Black, surrounded by outcasts, criminals, and the forgotten, John started to see something strange. Not in the men, in the stories. Old Maester Aemon had told him of Targaryens, of fire and madness, of noble blood and ruined thrones. He spoke with reverence, with bitterness, with knowing. And something in those stories made John's blood run hot. They were silver of hair, but strong, proud, beloved or hated, never ignored. John would lie awake at night thinking about it, not the silver hair, not the dragons, but the way people feared the truth. Back in Winterfell, Samwell Tarly would have been dismissed, but here John found a kindred mind. Sam listened, asked questions John didn't dare ask aloud. Your Uncle Ned. Did he ever say your mother was a tavern girl? John shook his head. Ever say she was dead? No? Then how do you know? John hadn't thought of that. He only ever believed what wasn't said. The shame in Ned's eyes when others asked. The way he shut down the moment bastard was mentioned. The way Lady Stark treated him like a stain on the snow. Sam leaned in. You think he lied? John clenched his jaw. I think he was protecting someone. Not you? No. The conversation haunted him for weeks, until the Raven came. It was thin, cold parchment, and the ink had smeared from the snow. A message from Winterfell. But not from Ned. From Catelyn Stark. John's hands trembled as he read her words. They weren't cruel. They were cautious, controlled. There were no apologies, no warmth. But between the lines, something dripped like poison. He promised me he'd never tell you, but now, with him gone, I no longer owe that silence. Your mother was not a whore. She was not even his lover. She was his sister. Lyanna. The name nearly choked him. The sister, the beloved, wild Lyanna, the one who vanished into legend. He read the name over and over until it lost meaning. Then a second name was scribbled faintly in the corner, barely legible. Rhaegar. He dropped the letter. Everything blurred, the world spun. If it was true, if he was Lyanna's son, and Rhaegar's, then he wasn't just a Stark bastard. He wasn't a bastard at all. He was a Targaryen, the son of a prince, of the man who died at the Trident, the man Robert Baratheon hated. And Ned, the man John had loved like a father, had murdered that truth, buried it in the crypts of Winterfell like some cursed relic. He paced the rookery until his lungs burned. Sam found him there and didn't speak, just stood quietly. Finally, John whispered, "He let me think I was dirt. He let the world treat me like nothing. He called himself honorable. But he never honored my mother, never honored me." Sam asked, softly, "Why would he lie?" John didn't blink. "Because Robert would have killed me." There was silence between them. Only wind. Then John said something colder than the night air. "If I had a child, I would never hide them for honor. I'd burn a kingdom to keep them safe." Sam swallowed. "What will you do?" John's eyes darkened. "I'll find the truth. All of it." He didn't say what he'd do after. He didn't have to. When John returned to Winterfell, it was not as the quiet bastard in the background. He came with the sharpness of a man who had questions no one wanted to answer, and fire in his blood. The cold halls felt smaller now, like a cage he'd outgrown. He walked the same paths, past the same stones, but everything felt different. Ghost followed silently beside him, as if sensing the unrest inside him. The direwolf had never been this restless, not even as a pup. John didn't know whether it was instinct or some ancestral unease stirring between beast and blood. Catelyn was gone. Robb was off to war. Bran was crippled, and Ned dead, but his secret still lived. Jon walked into the crypts, alone. The torches flickered against the damp stone as he descended. The air was thick, like it was holding its breath. He passed the carved faces of fallen kings, warriors, and finally stopped at her statue, Lyanna. He looked at the cold stone woman, her eyes carved wide, mouth firm, hair flowing like frozen wind. For the first time he didn't see a Stark. He saw his mother, and he hated the silence. He touched the stone. "Why didn't you scream louder?" Behind him, footsteps, light, cautious. "Maester Luwin, you shouldn't be down here." The old man said softly, "Then why are you here?" Luwin hesitated. "I feared you might come. I saw the raven. I knew it would draw you back." Jon turned. "So it's true." Luwin didn't answer, not with words, only a slight lowering of his head. Confirmation. "How long have you known?" "Long enough," Luwin said, "but not everything. Only what Lord Stark allowed, which wasn't much." "Did he kill her?" The question hung like a sword in the dark. Luwin's face twisted. He swore to protect her son. He swore on her dying breath. "That's not an answer." The old man shook his head. "And I don't have one. Only what I've guessed. There was no midwife, no raven sent to any maester, no record of childbirth in the Tower of Joy. Just a boy. And a body." Jon clenched his fists. He let everyone think she died giving birth. He needed a story. A softer one. Jon's voice rose, sharp and bitter. "He buried a queen in the dirt and made me a bastard. That's not honor. That's cowardice." Luwin sighed, as if the weight of it had bent his spine over the years. "He believed it was the only way to keep you alive." Jon looked back at the statue. "Then he should have told me. I would have rather died with truth than lived under a lie." Outside, a storm had started. Wind howled through Winterfell, and snow blew sideways against the walls. The crypt trembled with cold, but Jon stood still, his jaw tight. He left without another word. Later that night, Jon sat in Ned's old chambers. The fire was dying, casting long shadows on the walls. He found a box in the corner, dusty and sealed with an old leather strap. Inside were letters, not many, but enough. One was from Lyanna, faded, written in a hurried, sharp script. It was short but clear. "If Robert finds out, he'll kill the baby, not because of who he is, but because of who I loved. I trust you, Ned. But if I die, tell him who he is. Let him know I chose this, that I chose Rhaegar, that love made me brave." There was no mention of abduction, no mention of rape, only defiance and love, and fear of her own brother's silence. Jon closed the letter with trembling hands. His father had not been a liar. He had been a murderer of truth. And Jon Snow was not his son. He was Rhaegar Targaryen's legacy. What that meant, he didn't fully know yet. But the realm had killed his father for a lie, and it had raised him in shadows to protect a throne of steel and ash. Jon wasn't going to keep the silence anymore. He was going to break it and bury Ned Stark's honor with the truth, even if it meant setting fire to everything the North once believed. Snow fell like ash over Winterfell, soft and slow, muffling the sound of hooves and steel. The North was quiet, but not peaceful. Whispers had started to leak like blood from a wound. Jon Snow was no longer just the bastard boy from the corner of the feast hall. He had returned with a fire in his eyes and shadows on his name. The maesters didn't say it aloud. The guards avoided his gaze, but the old women who stirred stew near the hearth, they had begun to murmur. The Targaryen bastard, the dragon seed, the prince hidden in wolfskin. Jon didn't correct them. He didn't need to. He sat alone in the great hall, ghost of a man in his own home. Robb was still at war, Sansa a captive in King's Landing, Arya lost to the wind, Bran barely breathing, Rickon gone, all the Starks scattered like winter leaves. And Jon was left to inherit a secret that none of them deserved, a secret built on a blade, one carved across his mother's throat. His hands trembled as he turned the pages of a torn book from the Stark library, a ledger of births and deaths. Lyanna's name was there, but only her death, not a single note of childbirth, not even a footnote of a child born at the Tower of Joy. It was as if he hadn't existed, like he was a ghost Ned carried back, not a son, a burden wrapped in silence. He slammed the book shut. Ghost, curled near the hearth, looked up with red eyes, alert. Jon stood. "We're leaving." Samwell met him in the stables, out of breath, red-cheeked, eyes full of dread. "You can't go to King's Landing. Not now. The war—" "I'm not going to fight. I'm going for answers," Jon said, gripping the saddle. "If I'm to be anything more than a shadow, I need to know everything. From the men who were there." Sam shifted. "The king, Robert, he's dead. You can't get justice from him." Jon's voice darkened. "I'm not after Robert. I want the ones who helped hide the truth, the lords, the Kingsguard, the ones who watched my mother bleed and said nothing." Sam hesitated, then lowered his voice. "And then you'll need to find Sir Gerald Hightower's squire, the last one alive who was there, Arthur Dane's nephew. He lives in Dorne. Then I'll go to Dorne. You'll be hunted." Jon mounted the horse without a flinch. "I've been hunted my whole life. I just didn't know it." He rode out that night, no banners, no company, just a bastard who wasn't a bastard, chasing a truth that might kill him. Dorne was fire where Winterfell was ice. The sands stretched endlessly, golden and cruel. Jon arrived cloaked and cloaked again, hiding the pale, stark look beneath dark linen. But Dorne wasn't blind. They had long memories and sharper eyes. The Danes welcomed him, not kindly, but respectfully. They saw the Targaryen in him before he spoke. The sharp jaw, the haunted eyes, the prince's pride hiding behind silence. "You come to stir ghosts," said Edric Dane, the last blood of Starfall. "I come for the truth," Jon replied. Edric poured wine, then placed his hands on the table. "I was there, at the tower. A boy then, but not blind." Jon waited. "Your mother begged to be heard. She screamed for her son's name to be remembered. But Ned, he was already writing the lie in his eyes before the blade was drawn." Jon's breath caught. "So he did kill her?" "No," Edric said, "but he watched it happen and did nothing." Jon's heart thundered. "Who?" "The midwife. A girl Rhaegar trusted. She tried to stop Lyanna from bleeding out. But when she realized what had happened, that the war had been lost, that her queen was doomed, she told Ned the truth, told him what it meant, that you were the last drop of dragon blood, that you had to be declared, that the realm would rise or fall by your name. And she died in the night, a slit throat, blood everywhere. We were told it was wild men, but there were no wild men within 50 leagues. Jon's voice was low now, murderous. So my father let them die to protect a lie, to protect himself, and maybe you. But that's the part you'll have to decide." Jon stood, head spinning. "I thought I hated him for lying." Edric's eyes narrowed. "Then you didn't understand yet." Jon turned to leave, but Edric said one last thing before the door closed. "You weren't the lie, Jon, but your father, your uncle, he made you wear it." And Jon knew then. This wasn't just about finding the truth anymore. It was about making the world choke on it. The road back from Dorne was long, but Jon didn't feel its weight. His burden was not in leagues or terrain. It was in memory, in the names carved into his bones that were never spoken aloud. Lyanna, Rhaegar, Stark, Targaryen. The truth was no longer a flame hidden in shadow. It burned now, loud, angry, alive. By the time he returned north, the war had changed everything. Robb was dead. The Red Wedding had drenched the realm in silence and blood. The Stark name was whispered in sorrow now, not pride. Winterfell had fallen, risen again, and fallen once more. And in the middle of all of it, the lies had held. But not for long. Jon rode straight to the crypts. No greetings, no courtesies. Only ghost at his side and rage in his chest. He stood before Ned Stark's statue. Stone lips, cold eyes, the same hands that once ruffled his hair now forever frozen in false humility. "You died with everyone believing you were a good man," Jon whispered. "But I know what you really were." There was no echo, no voice from beyond. "I wanted to be like you," he said. "But now I know. You didn't protect me. You hid me. You didn't honor my mother. You buried her." He pulled Lyanna's letter from beneath his cloak, the one he had read 100 times in Dawn. He laid it at Ned's feet. "I won't wear your lie any more." Outside, the wind howled, and for the first time Jon didn't shiver. News of Jon Snow's true blood spread like wildfire once whispered aloud, not because he wanted it to, but because secrets like that could not be contained. Sam found the remaining pages in the Night's Watch archives. Gilly remembered the name. Even Bran, touched by the three-eyed sight, confirmed what no one wanted to believe. Jon was Aegon Targaryen, son of the last Dragon Prince and the woman. The realm thought stolen, not a bastard, not even a Stark. The North didn't know what to do with that. Some cheered, others recoiled. The old families spat words like Southerner and traitor, but none could deny the fire in his eyes. The way Ghost followed him with absolute trust, the way the North bent, not out of loyalty, but inevitability. He wasn't Ned Stark's heir. He was Westeros's reckoning. King's Landing was a graveyard of gold and steel. Cersei sat on the throne, hollow-eyed and drunk on power. The Iron Throne itself groaned under the weight of more corpses than victories, and then Jon came. He didn't ride in with armies. He didn't send ravens. He stood at the gates with truth as his sword and a crown he didn't want resting quietly. In history's ashes, when the Queen demanded to know who he was, Jon gave her one sentence: "I am the son of the woman your brother loved, and the man your lover killed." Cersei's lips trembled. "I am what your war tried to erase." She tried to have him executed that night, but even the gold cloaks hesitated. The rumor of dragon blood made men cautious and fearful. He wasn't just a name anymore. He was consequence. Jon never claimed a throne, he never wore a crown, but he walked through Westeros like a shadow of justice, uncovering secrets, confronting lords, forcing names to rise from graves. He didn't want power. He wanted Ned Stark's ghost to burn. He made it known what Lyanna wanted, that she chose Rhaegar. That her life wasn't a tragedy. It was a war torn apart by lies from men who thought they knew better. He gave her her truth back, not as a whisper, as a roar. And when he returned to Winterfell, when the last battle was done, and the snow settled once more on its ancient stones, he walked down to the crypt one final time. This time, he stood between the statues of Lyanna and Ned, one mother carved as a mourning maiden, one father molded from hollow virtue. "I forgive you," Jon said, "but I won't carry your silence any more." Then he turned, walked up the steps and into the storm outside, not a Stark, not a Targaryen, just a man born from truth the world tried to bury. But truth does not rot, it survives, and when it wakes, it burns.